Okay, welcome to this remote meeting of the decision session for the Executive Member for Finance and Performance, Thursday the 3rd of December. Today's meeting is being held in consultation with the Executive Member for Housing and Safer Neighbourhoods, Councillor Denise Craghill. Going through the agenda, item number 1, I have no declarations of interest. Do you have any declarations, Councillor Craghill? Okay. Item 2 is to approve and sign the minutes of the decision session held on the 5th of November. I'm happy to agree those as the correct record and will sign those when available in West offices. Item number 3, public participation. We have no members of the public registered to speak today. So I'll go straight on to agenda item 4, which is the winter grant scheme. I'll hand over to Pauline Stutchfield to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides the executive members with the City of York Council winter grant scheme for approval. In November, the government announced a package of extra targeted financial support for those in need over the winter period. The COVID Winter Grant Scheme has provided councils across England with new funding to support our residents with the cost of food, energy, water bills and other associated costs. This will enable the council to provide direct assistance to our vulnerable households and families with children, particularly affected by the pandemic, from now right through to March 2021. This will include families who normally have access to free school meals during term time, as well as other families. The funding allocation for York is almost £417,000, and we've now received the first 50% of that allocation to start making payments with once you've approved this scheme. Paragraph 5 in the report talks about the various other schemes that will be available to support families going forward, and importantly the DfE's Holiday and Activities Food Programme, which is now being firmed up to be released from April. This is on top of our own programmes of support available through our own hardship funds, such as York Financial Assistance Scheme, our Housing Tenants Hardship Fund, and the support available through our community hubs and our advice partners who work with us across the city. The winter grant funding will be provided in instalments with the 50% up front, which we've already received, 25% after supplying initial data back to the government, then based upon spend, a final balancing payment of up to 25%. As with any other grant, returns will be required and the full available monies must be spent by 31st of March 2021. Feeding into our recommendations then, I'll outline the proposal in brief for the use of the grant. Although this funding from the DWP is not specifically earmarked for free school meals, York, along with many other councils receiving the grant, are looking to allocate an element of the budget for this purpose, as no further similar funding is due from the Department for Education until April 2021, as outlined in the report. The cost of free school meals in York is around £50,000 per week and rising as more families are needing this support, with the total estimated up to the end of March of around £200,000. As such, this report recommends that this amount is top sliced from the winter grant as each proportion of the grant is received. So, for example, it's recommended that the £100,000 for the Christmas holiday free school meals is top sliced from the initial payment of just over £200,000, leaving £100,000 for the other support as described in our proposed scheme included in the report Annex A. Just as a tidying up point, an officer decision was made in October to support free school meals during the October half term from the Extended Welfare Fund. The value of this decision was £42,750, but the actual costs were higher than that at £46,560. This paper asked the executive member to approve the additional spend of almost £4,000 from the council's welfare fund, and that won't be coming from the winter grant allocation. With regard to the rest of the winter grant funding then, the government sets out two elements to the payment where they expect extra support to be made available, and these are described in paragraph 10 on page 8. So at least 80% of the total funding will be ring-fenced to support families with children, with up to 20% of total funding to the other type of households, including individuals who may live on their own. At least 80% of the total funding will be ring-fenced to provide support with food, energy and water bills, including sewerage, and up to 20% on other items. The two elements will be provided through a single application form, and the scheme criteria is set out in more detail in Annex A. The application form will be available for use from early next week and available until the end of March 2021. The support through this scheme is not dissimilar to that provided through the Council's own financial assistance scheme. It's therefore suggested in the hierarchy of support that this scheme sits above that. And the rationale for that is that we need to ensure that we maximise the full funding available to our residents from this scheme before spending the York Financial Assistance Scheme money. Therefore, each claim will be considered against the criteria of this winter scheme first, before then being referred on automatically for the YFAS scheme. The application form itself will be accessed digitally online, although support agencies and partners can apply on behalf of customers, and customers can ring us directly within the council, and we can assist them with completing the form as well. We will ensure that the scheme is really well communicated, both internally within the council and externally with partners. This includes schools and partner agencies across the city, including York CVS and Advice York. Local area coordinators and hubs are also going to be playing a vital role in getting the message out to families to make sure that they know that the funding is available. So in summary, going back to paragraph 2, executive members are asked to approve 4 recommendations. The top slicing of the grant for free school meals in respect of the school holidays up to the end of March this year. The winter grant to support families with the agreement of the scheme at Annex A through to 31st of March 2021, to approve the additional spend of £3,810 for the October free school meals as set out paragraph 9 from our hardship funds. And then if any minor changes are to be made to the scheme in future, that these are delegated to the Chief Finance Officer in consultation with yourself, Chair. David Walker is here to answer any questions on the detail of the scheme at Annex A. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open up to questions or comments. Councillor Craghill.
Thank you. I don't think I have any questions. I think that was very well explained. Thank you, Pauline. I've got a couple of comments. I just really like to welcome the fact that we have got this funding from the government, so we can help helping to support basic necessities, as was said, food, energy, water bills for families who are going to be struggling through this winter. And as we've heard, we'll be using part of that grant for the to support free school meals through the holidays and until April. I do think it would have been much better if the government had decided to directly fund free school meals for all children who need them throughout all school holidays. We know the council, as you said, had to step in and provide free school meals from our emergency funds to cover the October half term, and campaigners have had to push the government really hard to get this additional money. But at least we now have it to take us through to April, when, as you said, it looks like the government will deliver a further funding programme. The other part of the scheme, the winter grants, the general winter grants, is also welcome. Whilst we know the council has our own emergency grant scheme in place, as you said, through the York Financial Assistance Scheme, and the extra money we put into that, this further funding will help us to meet the rising demand that sadly we are going to see through this very difficult winter. And I think because our grant schemes are well established and well supported by a network of agencies, as you mentioned, who work really well together, we will be able to maximise the use of these funds to support York residents. So I'd just like to thank the council staff for getting this new scheme off the ground as quickly as possible, along with the many other schemes that they're also managing. And I'd urge people who are struggling to get in touch with the council, as they may be eligible for help via this scheme, or they may be eligible for other funding, and all that will be linked up together. So I'd just like to support the recommendation.
Councillor Crackhill. This one sort of question, David, is around, the key for me is around paragraph 16 and paragraph 6 and paragraph 14. So as I see it, there is some risk that if we're not able to communicate well enough and get enough information about the scheme, that we would then not be entitled to some of the further payments.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is key to the scheme, that we need to make sure it's well communicated, and we're working very actively on that. I think the other thing to point out about the scheme is that I know residents of the city must understand that this scheme is absolutely open to anybody. They don't need to be on benefits. It's literally open to anybody to support them. The only rules that would stop them being considered are if they've got capital of over £2,000 or they're not a resident. Beyond that, if you're on furlough, if you pay a mortgage, if you're not on benefits, you can come forward and make the claim. And I think that's a key message, that it is open, as is a YFAS scheme at the minute, to everybody to come forward. So people shouldn't hold back just because they've got a mortgage and not claim benefits. It doesn't mean we won't help them. And that's a key message that we need to get across.
In terms of the specifics, does that mean then that the 50% would need to be out by February 2021 to get the next 25%, or how is that methodology worked?
Yeah, I mean, if we haven't spent all the money, then they won't give us the next 25%. But as we've top sliced the free school meals money already, we've spent theoretically 50% of the money we've got. So we've got around £108,000 for the period up to February, and you know, we will push hard because it's in the interests of both ourselves and all our residents to get this money into our communities, and therefore we'll be expecting that we will be claiming the next 25%. In February, and we will need that money as well for free school meals, remember, because we can't top slice a full £200,000 now, so we need to get the next set of monies through. I'd rather be in a position where we're spending more than we've got in supporting people than we're not spending the money.
That's why I think I do that around that paragraph 14 around communications. It really will be incredibly important that we can get information out as much as possible on that. That isn't always going to be, I think, through council communications. It is going to be, as Pauline mentioned, through work with our partner agencies, through the health services, through people like Citizens Advice and stuff, to really help to push that message as hard as possible. I'll be relatively brief in my comments because I think Councillor Crackhill has probably covered most of the things I was going to say. I think from the very beginning of March, we were very quick to realise the impact this was going to have the pandemic on both residents and businesses. We put some business support in of our own, and we did put over £1 million of financial support in for residents. The same as we acted quickly on free school meals to make sure that was available before the government stepped in. And much as it pains me to say anything positive about anybody who plays for Man United, I have to commend some of the work of Marcus Rashford, and it shouldn't be down to Premier League footballers to get politicians to do the right thing. So I think with those comments, and again echoing Councillor Crackhill's thanks to officers for the amount of work that goes in, and I think that's part of my thing about communications is it's hard for us to keep track of the number of grants and schemes and application forms for businesses and residents that are being pushed through, and really will commend the work that officers have done of getting them out. And then it's that work that we do now to communicate to residents what is available and how we get the support to them that are needed. So I think with that one, I'm more than happy to agree recommendations on page 5, paragraph 2, A, B, C and D. Councillor Crackhill is in agreement? Okay, thank you. With that, I have no urgent business, so I'm happy to declare the meeting closed.